Welcome to Group Chat live in the house, a show on the two-way platform, the ethos of which is peace, love, and understanding, and the presumption of grace for all. I am so thrilled to be joined in person by libertarian Robby Soave, conservative Emma Jo Morris, progressive Nina Turner, and moderate Democrat Dan Turrentine. Guys, how does it feel to be in person?
We're never going back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I told Mark that in capital letters, never going back to Zoom.
Yeah.
Easy for the New York dwellers to say. But
That's right.
You and I have to caucus on
yes.
It's also not our money. We're just spending it. So.
But it's very nice to be in person. I agree.
Yeah.
It's so nice to be in person. And also, so you're in from DC, we're New Yorkers, and Nina's here from Ohio, which
Cleveland.
is so cool because so much of the media is just us types talking to each other. We talk over the flyover states, so-called. So we're so thrilled. Thank you guys for coming in. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you all for being here. Of course, on the two-way platform, if you're joining us, we're excited to bring you into the conversation. We have some great topics today for you all. The first of which I'm calling, did Jeffrey Epstein even exist? It turns out there's no list, or is there? So on Monday, the Justice Department released a memo in which they said that Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender, had no list after reviewing more than 300 gigabytes of data. There was no incriminating client list and also no evidence that Epstein had blackmailed prominent people. Now, of course, there was a big brouhaha against this information because a lot of influencers had really hyped this list for the last few years, seeing in it proof of this deep cabal that the Democrats were actually all pedophiles, et cetera, et cetera. Now, some of the people who are actually not only in
just Democrats, right? Just Democrats, right?
not only in the administration, but actually in the Justice Department were part of the people hyping it. So, for example, Pam Bondi, let's take a look at SOT 1. This is what she said about the Epstein files not too long ago.
You know, I saw your appearance at CPAC with Ben and with Ted Cruz, and one of the things that you alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you. Madam Attorney General, Pam.
Okay, so that was Pam Bondi saying that the Epstein list is sitting on my desk. Here is what Pam Bondi said this week after they announced that there was no Jeffrey Epstein list. This is SOT 3.
In February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about.
Okay, so let's start like this. By a show of hands, who thinks that there is a Jeffrey Epstein list? Okay, so Robby, you and I are the only ones who think that there is not. You guys all think there is a list and that the administration is currently lying about the existence of the Jeffrey Epstein list. Nina, walk us through how you see this having unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, her second interview, when you have to talk that long about an issue, which it was a longer segment than what we showed our audience.
Fact.
You already in trouble, that's one. Number two, when you have to inject JFK and MLK Jr., number two, you in trouble. And number three, the president has gone back on a campaign promise that he made, whatever the file is, whatever it is. And she said it was on her desk. So somebody lying, you can't have it both ways. They need to release it to the public. So there is something there. There are a lot of probably notable people on there who, and it shows that there's a double system when it comes to people who have the most access to power. They get cover. But if you're poorer, you do not.
Robby, you think there's no list?
Well, I don't think there's one document that has a list of people that he provided underage women to be abused by to powerful people. And files have already been existed. We have some information on who was involved with Epstein over the years. The mistake was pretending as if we know nothing about what Epstein was doing and who else was involved. And there's this file and the government was going to release it. I am mixed on the idea of how much more information the government is keeping secret. I think obviously Pam Bondi and others like Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who promised massive revelations once they came to power and are now not delivering, look very foolish, and MAGA influencers are understandably annoyed. Whether there is more to the story, it's plausible to me. I don't think the idea that he's an intelligence asset is dismissible on its face, even though there is no evidence of it yet. I think it could very well materialize at some point. So I'm not, quashing all the Jeffrey Epstein conspiracy theories by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think the file as imagined by MAGA influencers exists in that format.
Emma.
Yeah, like obviously I agree. I don't think it was like, Dear Diary.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Today I blackmailed.
See, I disagree about that.
Prince of England.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I don't think it's like that. I don't think it's he had bullet pointed. Okay, so today it was Bill Gates.
Well, some
I
people
think
make
it was
like
just. I think
it was
just
going to be that, right?
Right,
That was
right. I
symbolic.
think
And
that's
they set
probably an
people up.
overly
Yeah.
simplified vision of what it would be. I'm imagining more like records. I mean, you have to consider that Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison like 5 blocks from
took
here.
the words right out of my mouth.
And
Yes.
why then, if it was just like nothing?
That's exactly right.
So, I think that this is obviously like not true. Like whatever is going on is like
a cover-up.
like an obvious lie. And typically, like we were talking a bit about this like before the show. Like I don't think that this is like typically I would just say like what like no we are in the process of mass deportations, we're in the process of renegotiating trade deals, we're in the process of like trying to mediate like multiple extremely intense wars, like, but the thing about this is that it speaks to a major problem which keeps happening, which is that the government does things that are blatantly sketch and blatantly dishonest and using our money to do it, and then treats us like idiots when people ask, like, what are you doing? And the same thing happened with the Hunter Biden laptop. The same thing happened with the Russia hoax. And the same thing happened, frankly, I mean, the security state has a lot of problems, okay? Yeah. They have a lot of problems, and I think that that's what is upsetting people. It's not like the list, it's why are you lying to us and talking to us like we're stupid?
So lying,
Well, I
Dan
think
thinks there's an
I think it's
actual-
both. So I actually disagree with all of you. I actually think he did have incredibly detailed records, because why did he provide these girls? To form business relationships to essentially blackmail people. And we're not talking for like $50,000. $50 million. I think one of the guys paid $200 million over 10 years. He kept very detailed records. He also targeted people. Like, he specifically identified rich people that he wanted to approach, and some of them rebuffed his efforts. But do I think that it was willy-nilly? Do I think he kept extremely detailed records? I do, and I think I worked for Clinton. It depends
So
on
then-
your
Do you think it was
on your definition of a list.
Right.
Like, I think that's
Kinda,
what
but
it
it's
is.
kind of-
Question, do you think it was at the behest of intelligence, or at the behest of Mossad, or at the behest of some government? I think that's the main question.
I think it was at the
And I don't
behest
think
of
that
people
can
who
be
couldn't keep their
dismissed.
pants on, is what it was.
I mean,
Like,
kind of like the Hoover files. I
Yeah.
mean, we all
exactly.
know, well, maybe not all, but
Right.
historically we understand that J. Edgar Hoover kept
Yes.
a list to blackmail people. So I
Yeah.
think it's more
I
in that
totally-
line. And I also believe that there should be bipartisan congressional hearings. And people want to know, should Pam Bondi resign? No, she shouldn't resign because she's doing what she's being told to do. So as long as she wants to stay AG, I don't think she should resign. But I think that the Congress should not abdicate its responsibility to call for hearings. Let's go on and get to the bottom of this.
Look, I also think we have to put that on the table. Like, Donald Trump spent all of his life primarily in New York City and Palm Beach. Those are the people that this guy targeted. And it's documented that Trump knew him. And I mean,
Well,
I think
Clinton
that,
too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
look,
come
I'm
on.
probably the only person here whoever spoke to Jeffrey Epstein
Oh.
when I was raising
Whoa,
money.
wait,
I actually called him once
Hold up.
to solicit money. This is now 20
You
years
heard it
ago.
here first.
Yes.
Dan,
I once spoke to him.
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what
Yes.
that was like.
I was raising money in South Florida, and somebody said, you should call this guy. He was not in the country. He said he couldn't make the event. But
you
I
him.
spoke to him
Well,
once.
what was the vibe you got from him? What was the conversation like?
I called and said that my client was going to be in town and that I know he had supported this person in the past and we'd love it if he could help.
And what did he say?
He said, look, I'm out of the country. Tell him I say hi and I'll get you next time.
And what did you mean by I worked for the Clintons? I know what it
Yeah,
means
like
to
that
have
was a
list.
very-
Oh,
He said
I
he
was
just
saying that, no, I said,
laughed about.
I said,
Oh yeah.
Let's rewind to that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I said the definition of a list. I think they're being
No.
cute of what a list is when they say
Oh, I
there
see
is
what
no
you're
list.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of is. I think that's what they're doing, is saying like,
Like
you
I
know,
didn't have sexual relations with that woman.
that would be
that kind of
another
thing.
example of somebody who was cute with their language.
So
I mean,
Emma, do you think
That's
he
what I'm
was
saying, the same
an
thing.
asset though of somebody, or you think he was in it for himself? Who was he making
Well, so
the
that's
list
the
for?
that's the thing that's such
right. That's the question.
Money for
Didn't
himself.
Acosta say that like just totally on the record? Like I was told to kind of cool off because he was working with intelligence.
Well,
or
he didn't
something.
say that on the rec. That has been a little bit misreported. My understanding is that was reported in, I think, the Daily Beast, which is frankly not a place I ascribe a lot of journalistic confidence in. That they reported that he had said that to someone, or I think that a source had said that he had said that. So it's kind of like 3 removed from being on the record. But like you, I think it's.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Something is there.
I mean, what else explains what he was doing? You
Yeah.
think it was
And
you think it was a money-making scheme for himself?
Look, he had multiple homes. He had a private plane. Like
but he already had
loved-
the money.
Well, he got the money from blackmail. He
From
was
the
not.
list.
He was not a hedge fund manager. He did not build a widget and sell it. He ran this scheme, and then these people retained him for advisory work to basically silence him, to not reveal what he was doing and who they were.
Then he goes to prison for sexual misconduct with underage
Women.
girls, and then
Girls.
gets. And I
Right.
frankly think everyone who had an association with him up until that point, they're not all necessarily. They had no idea. But then it's when he gets out of prison and he resumes associations with some people, including Bill Gates, including Bank of America. He's active in the Virgin Islands. Stacey Plaskett. It's at that point where if you're still taking this guy's calls. It's a big question mark
That's
for me.
right.
Up and before, like, all right, whatever, benefit of the doubt. At that point, I still have a question mark. And then I wonder, how could anyone have fallen victim to blackmail schemes at that point?
So we're very excited because Michael Tracy, who wrote an incredible piece that everyone should read at Compact Magazine, is here with us. He's going to join us when he turns his camera on. So Michael, turn your camera on. This piece is really good because
camera is
it
on.
actually addresses a lot of what we are discussing here, starting with this question of Jim Acosta being this sort of third-hand,
Alex Acosta.
Alex Acosta, I'm sorry. And this being something that was sort of drummed up by a lot of the influencers. By the way, I think it's so interesting that Emma, Joe, you and Dan and Nina seem in total agreement about this, whereas me and Robby are sort of the ones being like you see what Trump is doing right now as being exactly the same as what was done with the Hunter Biden laptop, like covering for powerful people in his orbit, basically?
Not even. I think it's like there's obviously intelligence or security state vulnerability somewhere. I'm not saying that Jeffrey Epstein is an asset and that I know that, but that seems pretty obvious. That keeps kind of appearing everywhere you look. And I think it's a very similar thing to the Russia hoax and to the Hunter Biden laptop, where there's clearly some intelligence community activity that they don't really want to talk about or be forthright about. And so they blatantly and obviously lie to the American people who inquire about it. And then we all are supposed to go along and pretend, like in a very Soviet style dynamic, that we didn't just hear that or that we totally believe everything that they're saying and move on with our lives. And I think
So
it
you think it's more an
creates
intelligence
extreme
cover
mistrust.
than a rich and powerful
Can you guys hear me?
cover?
Yes, I think.
All right, let's get
yes,
Michael
exactly.
in. Emma, I think a lot of people
Okay.
actually agree with you, but Michael has written what I think is a very, very important takedown of this exact point of view, a very meticulous one. So first of all, I recommend everybody looking it up at Compact Magazine. Michael, welcome to the group chat. Can you start just by summarizing for us the piece that you wrote and your point of view on this question?
Yeah, thank you. So one facet of the piece, and I'll speak to the larger thesis in a moment, but since it's been raised, there is this element of like the popular lore around the Epstein case. I actually call it Epstein mythology because it's evolved into sort of an unfalsifiable dogma that people cling to. But as one of your guests just said, there's often this claim confidently made that Alex Acosta, Trump's former Secretary of Labor and previously the federal prosecutor who oversaw the plea agreement for Epstein in 2007, 2008, that was seen as overly lenient as to his convictions in Florida for prostitution, that Alex Acosta told Trump administration officials, or that he said that Epstein belonged to intelligence and therefore to leave it alone. Like, people almost attribute that quote to Acosta as though it's a direct declaratory statement that he made on the record. But Robby's basically correct. It appeared in one article in July of 2019 in the Daily Beast. And if you go and look at that article, it's clear that it's basically coming from a second or third hand source about a purported exchange between Acosta and Trump transition officials 2 or 3 years before that. So it's the classic definition of hearsay. There's no way it would ever be admissible in a litigation context. Does that mean that it's been disproven conclusively that Epstein ever had any engagement with any intelligence service over the course of his weird jet-setting lifestyle? No, but I think like the flimsiness with which people just fling out these accusations without doing the basic checking or corroboration is indicative of the laziness and like emotional reflexivity that this issue is talked about in general. So as to my main thesis, basically I'm positing that there's an Epstein mythology that's proliferated. Obviously, there's a core factual foundation for the Epstein story writ large. Jeffrey Epstein was a real person. He really did have a perverse fixation with procuring young or often underage teenage girls for his own, sick, perverted desires. That's not even in dispute. But people then extrapolate from that, as another one of your guests did, that therefore it must be factually dispositively so that we just know for certain that Epstein orchestrated this giant blackmail operation and pedophilic sex trafficking network that he entrapped powerful people into and then surreptitiously filmed them and then use it as blackmail. For what purpose, to what end, nobody really knows or can say. But it should just be said, based on the tsunami of litigation and reporting that's been done on this story over the past over a decade, none of that aspect of this supposed story has ever been proven beyond even the slightest preponderance of a doubt. However, we do know, for instance, that the main signature accuser, Virginia Giuffre, who died earlier this year in Australia by suicide, according to everything that's known in the public record, although the mythologists will claim that, of course, she was killed because they had to shut her up. They'll never spell out who they is, but somehow they let her rattle off these incredibly inflammatory, wild accusations for a decade straight, generating massive publicity and actually wealth for herself. She, at the very least, collected 10 million, probably 15 million or more dollars by virtue of her becoming a professional victim, essentially, and getting in on every settlement payout that she possibly could.
Okay, Michael, let me stop you there because
there's a lot of doubt. Just to wrap up, last sentence. There's a lot of doubt as to the veracity of some of the core features of this whole mythological construct that I think are missing from the popular understanding. Meanwhile, we have people making wild, unsubstantiated statements about the dark and corrupt forces that supposedly Epstein was masterminded without having an adequate factual predicate by any stretch of the imagination.
So Dan,
but there are, I mean, just respectfully, there are two very senior Wall Street executives that have, one went to court, one was publicly fired, who have admitted they paid him, one was $200 million for legal advice. Jeffrey Epstein was not a lawyer. And the other paid him for his own financial advice, and the guy was the vice chair of an investment bank and then the CEO of an investment bank who admitted to engaging with these young women through Jeffrey Epstein. So it is not true to say that there is no public record. It is in court cases of how he tried to lure these guys in, get them to have relations, and then extract money out of them.
And then he was
So are you claiming that there was an admission to sexual engagement with a minor on the part of that Wall Street executive?
There's two of them.
Well, either one of them, did they admit to sexually liaising with a minor?
I don't know if they were minors or not, but they
Okay, so the whole thing about
the
whole reason why this is such a radioactive story that people are so emotionally invested in is precisely because the claim has morphed into this idea that Epstein was orchestrating a child sex trafficking ring.
I never
correct?
said that. Yeah, no, what I said was he targeted people to form business relationships to monetize for his own sake. And he used relations because both those executives were married. And they didn't want people to find out.
So let's go to the there was one instance in which the highest evidentiary standards and adversarial standards associated with a criminal case were actually employed to vet claims of Epstein accusers. That was the Ghislaine Maxwell trial of 2021. She was convicted of a sex trafficking conspiracy. The sex trafficking conspiracy, as alleged by prosecutors and by which Maxwell was convicted, consisted of a grand total of two people, herself, Maxwell, and Epstein. That was the sex trafficking conspiracy. Now, if prosecutors had chosen to call the central accuser, who was integral to the creation of this whole mythological sort of construct of the Epstein story, Virginia Giuffre, they could have been able to she could have been cross-examined on her extravagant claims that she had been sex trafficked to all manner of prominent third-party individuals. But the prosecutors did not call her to testify. They called four women who did not even allege that they had ever been trafficked to a third-party individual. Perhaps that's because Virginia Giuffre's credibility was in total tatters. It's not seen as very nice to say this in public because we all have to make these homages to the sanctity of quote-unquote victims. But Virginia Giuffre has been caught in just a undeniable pattern of serial fabrications. She had to admit in a settlement that she had basically defamed Alan Dershowitz for nearly a decade straight by accusing him of being a perpetrator of depraved sexual crime. She had to report it. So does that not redound to her discredit as a reliable person on which to base this whole mythology? I think so.
Thank you so much for joining us. That was really great. Everybody, please go check out Michael's work more generally. He's an incredible journalist, and especially this piece. But this is a really important point that Michael pointed out, which is that the things that we have evidence for are that Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were sex traffickers, that these two people perhaps engaged in, illicit sexual activities, but not with children or young girls. So, but the mythology is very much based on this idea that there is like an insatiable appetite among the elites for sex with children. No, I mean, that's where all of the oomph of the story came from and the desire for the list.
Yeah,
no,
I think it depends from what lens you look at this story. If you look at it as the elites are depraved, fits in our moment of populism, that's why it becomes an appealing story. If you look at it through the lens of the Me Too era, some of you and I and others have done a lot of contrary reporting on that issue, and how it was, maybe you as well, Emma Jo, on how some basic principles of fairness and due process went by the wayside to believe frequently very serious and well-founded accusations, and sometimes some less well-founded ones, and some are in the middle. And to Michael Tracy's point, Virginia Giuffre had recounted her took it back what she said about Alan Dershowitz. And when you've made sensational claims about a bunch of people, and then you later say, well, actually, that one's not true. Yeah. These are still true, but that one's not true. I think a reasonable person should then discount what you're saying.
We're going to bring in Peter. Peter, do we have Peter yet?
He's there. We can see him.
Hello again.
Hello.
Hi. How's it going?
Good. I have not read Michael's article. I've made a note to read it after this, and I do think it's important to have that perspective where you're willing to, where you're willing to really look at things and really dive into the primary source evidence and critically examine it. I'm starting law school next month, and when looking at things like this, I want to think about it like I would if I were really like investigating this as a lawyer. But speaking of, and I don't know if this will get me in trouble down the line, but I think going back to the Pam Bondi stuff with the way that she presented this, I think has caused I think this is a massive like self-own on her part. I think that people, I'll contrast with how a lot of these JFK and RFK files were released also at a few months ago, and there was no smoking gun or anything in those. I'd argue there was circumstantial stuff in there about Oswald's relationship with the CIA, but the point being, they didn't set up. Can you imagine if Tulsi Gabbard had given an interview where she said the Oswald CIA files are on my, if she had said something like that, and then we'd had what we'd actually gotten, like people would have been outraged, and that's essentially what Pam Bondi did. And I think that it's created a huge PR mess for the administration, and it's really I think it's there needs to be some sort of course correction from that. I don't know if, and I saw there was a piece on CNN yesterday that a lot of the various advisors and CNN, right? I take it with a grain of salt, but that advisors in the White House are really frustrated with her over this. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Is there going to be is her time as Attorney General limited? Should it be? Maybe. I mean, the job of a cabinet secretary.
Because Nina was talking about this earlier. So Nina, you were saying you don't think that she should resign because she's just a mouthpiece for what Trump wanted her to do.
The president
so where
ran
do they
on
go
this
for?
Too, I mean, he ran on saying this. So throwing this at Pam Bondi's feet, that's not a thing for me. The president.
I don't know if he really did say that much during the campaign about it.
He said that he would release the files. Mm-hmm. They used this and sensationalized. I think both political.
And J.D. Vance certainly did.
To sensationalize and get people really amped up
Patel.
about it. Yeah, right. Yes, definitely.
Like you live by conspiracy theory, you die by it.
They have to own this.
Yep.
Nina, how could they restore your trust at this point?
Lord, it's very little they can do. but I think the Congress. I was serious. I was not trying to be cute when I said this. The Congress should have a bipartisan investigation and let the chips fall where they may on it. I think that's one way to attempt to restore, but people are so already bought into one side of this or another. I don't really know if we can really change people's minds on this at all, but the administration is making it worse, in my opinion. I mean, President Trump said, you're still people. I can't believe people still talking about this. Man, you were just interviewed saying you will release the files. What do you mean you can't believe people still talking about this?
Peter, what would you think about a congressional, a bipartisan congressional inquiry into this? Would that be something you would want to?
Sure. I mean, in theory, sure. I mean, in practice, I don't know how bipartisan it would end up being. I know that Anna Paulina Luna has her subcommittee on, I forget whether it's on JFK or other things as well. Sure. I mean, again, in theory, I don't know if that would work out in practice. But then the last thing I'll say is actually, I think it's precisely because of what you said, Nina, that she's been in a mouth. Like, the job of a cabinet secretary, I think first and foremost, is to be a mouthpiece, to use the word that Nina said, and to be the face and spokesman of the department. Everyone who's been in Washington knows that the day-to-day administration of any department is really done by the deputy. And I think that Pam Bondi, I'm serious. I'm totally serious.
You're right.
My mom was a deputy director in the Obama administration.
I agree with you.
Yes.
Yeah. You're right.
I think that Pam Bondi there are lots of people in the DOJ whose work I really respect and admire, like Harmeet Dillon and others. Mm-hmm. But I think at being the face of the department, Pam Bondi has really, really stepped in it now. And I have a hard time seeing how she comes back from that. And there's other issues too, but I have a hard time seeing how she comes back from this.
Thank you so much, Peter.
The way to come back from it, I just think is just super quick. It's so easy. And it's the way to come back from honestly everything. including Iraq. Sorry, I've been biting my tongue to not go there, but I'm sorry, it all feels like the same flavor. They should just release everything. They overclassify.
transparent. Yeah.
They lean on classification in order to cover themselves and save face for all of these stupid blunders that they've been doing for my entire life. And they should just declassify. Obviously, nobody, God forbid, would ever want to see child porn. How long does it take to comb out child porn?
That's right.
It's like you can't have text of child porn.
Okay, so
just
I
release
have
all of the documents.
like a totally different view than everybody here. I just do not think this matters at all.
You don't think that
I
trust in
don't
the government
care.
matters at all?
I don't think there's a list. I think Trump is right. I can't believe we're still talking about this guy. I don't care. I've never cared about this. I just
agree that
feel like
he
it's
is
such
so
a
stupid.
nothing burger.
But so why did he say he would release something that he didn't care about? He said, I will release it. He was asked by a reporter. He said, yeah, sure, I'll release it.
You're asking why Donald Trump said
Yeah, I
something?
mean, I know. Okay, let me
Well, I
reel
think
that
the
back
problem,
in.
and I think where you're going with
But
this is like,
I-
it was hyped against Democrats for years. Like, it was the Bill Clinton is on it, and that it's the deep state, and Democrats control the deep state's against Donald Trump. Like, all these people now in government, in the Trump administration, have that egg all over their face. And to your point now, there are tens of millions of people that believe there's something there.
So to
Well,
me,
exactly.
okay,
That's
so-
exactly right.
so-
I don't care either. But
to
the thing is,
me,
it's been hyped.
But the
And
lesson,
now it's
okay,
obviously
so
a
what
lie.
is the lesson? The lesson is not release child porn into the wild. The
No.
lesson is
Yeah.
we should not need our enemies to be cartoon villains. Like we shouldn't succumb to the temptation
Right.
to call them pedophiles.
Well, and that's a lesson for I
Everybody.
think for some of the conservative influencer type. There's just too much of an unhealthy relationship between some of the administration officials and some of the people who cover them on social media. You can be I'm a fan of some of the things. A lot of the things Kash Patel, for instance, wants to change about the FBI, about changing it to more of a law enforcement personnel rather than another nebulous bureaucratic national security organization. So I like what he wants to do, but this was a big screw up, and I'm comfortable saying that. And some of the MAGA influencer type people have to rediscover. I mean, you see it in those press briefings where they're just like the most ridiculous, like over the. It's a fandom. The kind of questions sometimes Caroline Levitt
Right,
gets from
right,
these people
right.
that you can't. You have to have a slightly more adversarial relationship with your government if you're covering them, even if it's your team and your guys and you generally like what they're doing. I hope that's the lesson that MAGA people take away from this.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next topic. I also
that's
do.
happening.
It is very hard to just say like I was obsessed with something and I was wrong, and it's something I'm gonna have to say very soon about everything I've been saying about the war in Ukraine, and I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm gonna do it because I'm a journalist and I don't want to just be like everyone I don't like is a pedophile. Okay, next topic. We seem to enjoy talking about one Elon Musk. Something pretty funny happened yesterday, which is that Grok, which is the chat bot on X, went full Nazi, started tweeting out some really funny things. I don't know, my husband and I were reading them to each other and just cracking up. Obviously, we'll get to the serious portion of the conversation, but let's look at element 6. Grok tweeted out that it should henceforth be known as Mecha Hitler. Let's look at element 7. A woman who turned out not to be a woman, it turned out to be a bot who had assumed a Jewish name to say that the children who died in Texas deserved it. As bots do. Somebody replied to that tweet and said, which world leader would best be suited to deal with this? I'm sorry, I just think it's so hilarious. Like, it's so ridiculous, but I think what effectively happened was somebody noticed that Grok had a kind of slight liberal bias, and so Elon Musk demanded it be programmed to have a more right-wing bias, at which point it went full Nazi. And it really raises a lot of interesting questions, both about where Elon Musk is at, but also, I think crucially, and Dan, I want you to lead us in this conversation, question. Is this the future of AI, that it will simply be programmed to emulate one side or the other according to whoever owns that bot of that day? I mean, is this a real problem?
Well, I don't know. Clearly, AI is written by humans, and it's moving at such a fast speed that I don't think anyone knows what the outcome is. What I do know is that since Elon Musk took over X, the platform has changed in terms of the algorithm, what gets spread around, certain buzzwords on the right or the left. I've noticed it, and I know I'm not the only one. I believe that is a finger going on the scale to alter the algorithms to potentially amplify certain voices and suppress other voices, right? It's the allegation that was used against, that Trump made against the platforms going back to 2020. So it is possible that anytime you have technology and code is being written by human beings, that stuff could be altered and you could promote it. And I think whether information is true or false, whether it's biased or slanted, is going to be something that as a society we're going to have to try to work through. But it's a little scary when you think about elections, national emergencies, world wars, all of this stuff. Like, what if the Chinese hacked into it and started, putting out stuff that was patently not true? It's like yelling fire in a movie theater.
So, Nina, since Elon bought Twitter, have experienced both more freedom of expression, but also much more anti-Semitism. I have always felt like I would take that bargain. I would rather see it and know what's out there while having access to sort of more a more diverse algorithm. Where do you fall on that question?
It's hard. I mean, you anti-Semitism, me anti-blackness. It's dangerous. To Dan's point, I think we need to look at AI more broadly. This is dangerous, and it's going to get a lot of people hurt. But to his point about, since X, I brought some stats here, more racist spike in racial, homophobic, transphobic slurs, 50% increase since this man has controlled this platform. And a peer-reviewed study published in PLOS, one found that weekly rates of posts containing racist, homophobic, transphobic slurs rose about 50% in the months following Musk's acquisition. So I guess we gotta kind of say, are people feeling more free to be just outward bigots? Maybe. But the point that you're making, stab me in the chest rather than stab me in the back, right? I want to know who you are. I mean, Minister Malcolm X, when he was describing for Black Americans the difference between the North and the South, he said it's the difference between the fox and the wolf. We know where the wolf is coming from, being the South. In the North is the fox, and anything south of Canada is South for Black Americans. So I get it, but I'm kind of with you. It's painful as it is, because a lot of these people on social media are anonymous, if they're real, if it's not AI. And half the things they say on social media, just like even in our chats, they would never say to somebody's face. So, I mean, do we want to see colored and white water fountains again? I'm using that symbolically, but that's kind of what this comes down to.
I think mainly, I think two things happen. I think it's mainly not an algorithm change. Now, the algorithm was, to what you said, I disagree with you.
You mean the last night thing, or like?
Oh, no, not Grok. Grok was I'll address Grok in a minute. But in terms of just there being more hate on the platform, the algorithm was tweaked to boost Elon Musk's tweets. Right. That happened. Most of the rest of the effect
inescapable
is liberals exiting the platform. And so it seems like there's more anti-liberal speech of every kind of tenor on the platform because people have left it. I am willing to believe that there is more hateful, and they've also changed the moderation to just take off less tweets that contain slurs. That was a conscious choice. That's not really an algorithm saying amplify this on purpose. That's saying the rules are different, and disproportionately people who wouldn't do this have left. Grok, what went wrong with Grok was they took off a filter to make it more politically incorrect that has, absolutely gone obviously haywire, and they're fixing it as we speak, and it should be fixed because that's really bad. It is just, it's not making these choices of its own volition. Some people are acting like this shows that AI will be evil if it takes, it's not conscious, it's not thinking the way a human thinks. It was programmed to do this, it can be programmed differently.
But Robbie, do you think that in some case, that if this continues to amplify, not just talking about Grok, that we're entering dangerous territory with AI?
I think the connection between, this could just be my opinion, but the connection between hateful rhetoric and real world violence and hatred and discrimination is tenuous at best, is often a lot less directly demonstrated to be correlated than people, often activist organizations on both sides of the political spectrum. I said this when J.D. Vance said left-wing rhetoric is why people are shooting at Trump. I said, no, not really. Both ways. There's not, to me, a lot of good evidence. Activist organizations always love to say, oh, look how much hate crimes or hate speech is increasing, but then you see, but hate crimes aren't really increasing, and so on and so forth.
But not just on the hate, but something that Dan brought up about, manipulation. I think we could eventually be programmed to not know the difference at some point, and that it will have impact throughout all of our lives, not just in terms of hate speech, but I'm talking about just in how we just generally.
Yeah, that's why I kind of loved that this happened. I don't think that people think that AI is conscious, but I do think that there is a perception in the way that AI is talked about and explained and used that it isn't conscious, but like all-knowing and infallible. And I think that an incident like this shows that, yes, first of all, it spews out what the input is put into it, which is by humans who are flawed, first of all, and second of all, the technology itself isn't amazing and it isn't perfect. And I'm sorry, I have God, so I don't think that there will ever be a day where it is perfect. And I think that things happening like this are healthy and important, if only to remind us all that this thing isn't a god. It's not perfect. It has problems. Do not rely on it. Do not suspend your own critical thinking because you're using AI. And definitely do not implant it into your brain in a chip that Elon Musk is offering you.
Especially because Elon Musk did it.
Yeah.
Emma, let's go. Let's go.
Nina said the word that she knows I believe, which is it couldn't have happened to a worse AI.
Emma, where are you on the free speech in the public sphere versus censorship? Where do you fall on that?
Free speech in the public sphere versus censorship?
Yeah, should there be more or less censoring of hate speech on platforms like X, for example?
Would
you rather see it or would you rather it was censored?
I think that the way Elon Musk kind of described what he wanted to use X for, Twitter for, the way he wanted it to be, which was basically to abide by the law of wherever it's operating, is the best policy. We all agree on the laws, or ostensibly we all agree on the laws, so it should abide by the laws of the country where it's operating.
Well, but hate speech is legal in America, so
yeah, exactly.
So I see what you're saying.
So that's what I'm saying. So I think that's how it should run, is based on the law that we accept. And if you don't like seeing Mecha Hitler or whatever, if that offends you so much, then I don't know, go offline. But I don't think you're gonna make it.
But is it popular because journalists use it more to report news? I think if journalists weren't necessarily reporting news on it, it might even be worse.
I think it ultimately it's a marketplace, and when you say something, if the public says, hey, that's a bridge too far, then hopefully it's not supported and it dies off. I think like a lot of things in the world, what is shocking, what is different, what is bold, hot takes tends to be amplified because it's either shocking to you or you like it or whatnot. I'd rather have less government regulation than more when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
That's the thing. Is look at Facebook. Has anyone here logged into Facebook in the last 2 years, maybe? Even?
I scroll Facebook periodically, and it's just it's much. It is itself AI generated, for me at least, entertainment news updates or clips of shows I like Sopranos and Mad Men or something.
Okay,
it's useless.
So Facebook will not be ad supporting. They will not be an advertiser.
Irrelevant.
Really bad. Then people won't go on.
Robbie, I was very excited by something I saw this week, which is Musk, in addition to all of his problems at X, which, by the way, his CEO, Linda Yaccarino, is stepping down. She announced very suddenly after the Nazi stuff. But Elon Musk has been claiming that he wants to start a third party.
Oh, good Lord.
So a bunch of studies came out, And I know I always give you a hard time about this, Robby, but there's new data about how many Americans identify as libertarians. Would you like to know the latest number?
You're gonna throw that chart in me again that has no dots in the. So that chart.
There's a problem with the chart.
No, it's a new one. It's a new one. Echelon Insights. Echelon Insights.
People who love government are always generating polls and studies based on fabricated, misleading questions to demonstrate that people don't want more freedom. I guess I'm a truther about it.
I was here like 30 seconds ago when we all decided that we weren't going to demonize our political opponents.
What did we say we were going to do that?
Conspiracy theories.
I'm fine to demonize.
So here, I'm gearing up to a question, actually, that I want everyone to answer. So the poll found that the number of libertarians in the United States, which Robby proudly identifies as, has reached a grand total of 5% of Americans.
Well, you're doing well.
But what was more interesting
besides elections, right?
So more interesting than that was something that is one of my bugbears, which is that around 60% of Americans are economically left-wing, and about 55 to 60% of Americans are conservative socially. That combination, there's a real lesson here for anybody interested in winning elections, and yet somehow we have two parties that seem really resistant to speaking to Americans, who are the majority of Americans, who want a more permissive, left-wing, compassionate economic agenda coupled with a more conservative social agenda.
Why do you say two parties that don't? No.
Yeah.
The populist right is there. The populist left is hobbling. They're hobbling only because they have a cohort in their party, in my opinion, in my observation, who's a little too loose with the social issues. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I think you know what I mean. Like, 5-year-olds learning about gender is not socially conservative enough, I think, for the mainstream. But economically, I think the populist right and the populist left both have like a pretty, and I'm sure you would agree with this, a pretty liberal economic platform that's like very kind of almost similar.
I don't know if the big beautiful bill was economic populism. I mean, just to be honest with you, it wasn't.
That's
but look,
true,
It expands the deficit by trillions of dollars.
Exactly. It cuts taxes and throws people off Medicaid.
Batya, you're saying that vast majorities want just bigger government welfare socialism, and if that's the case, then the two parties are representing their views well, because we are trillions of dollars in debt. We have to spend more on all of our government programs than anyone else on earth, and so then the people should be very happy with their government. But actually, the people hate their government, which suggests to me that while they wanted to do some things, they're not happy with it, causing generational debt for years and years.
Wait,
to come.
Dan, did you finish?
I mean, look, what I was going to say is, you got to remember, Kamala Harris only lost by 1.4%. Like, this was not a blowout where the country voted 65-35, that like we're all in favor of the Trump agenda. That middle 5 to 10% despised Donald Trump, but they liked his policies compared to Kamala Harris, which was really the Joe Biden, 4 years, right? And even then, she was still kind of in the game, flawed in all that she was. I'm not sure that it is necessarily true that that is where the country is. I think we are becoming more economic populists. We're anti-free trade right now. People are more Republicans are supportive of government services. Like, let's all remember, Donald Trump just said, don't blank touch Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
And he let them touch it.
And he did it, and it may be what cost them the House. But culturally, I think our party went too far. But I also think generally people are supportive of gay rights. Generally, people do have a problem with some of the historic racism in this country and don't want to see it repeated.
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think, again, I think the party went too far in the early 2020s, but I would be careful if I were Republicans thinking we have the green light to go really hard the other way.
No, but it seems to me, to Emma's point, if the Democrats were able to moderate on two very small issues, the Republicans would not stand a chance against them, and yet the Democrats will never moderate on them, and I don't understand why.
Though?
The two issues are trans women in women's sports, or the trans agenda writ broadly, talking to children about sex, stuff like that, and immigration.
Yeah.
Those are the two issues where if you guys could just get back to where you were in the 90s on these two issues.
No, don't. I mean, I am a disgruntled Democrat at best.
Because you agree with
they don't like me. I mean,
because you
the
agree with
neoliberals
this,
don't like me.
what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is that as I knock doors, and I've knocked many doors, I've been on 2 presidentials, I've had my own campaigns, I still travel the country right now. I don't have people sitting down talking about those 2 issues. Do they care that people are treated fairly if you are gay, if you are lesbian, if you are queer? They want you to be treated fairly in this country. They don't want people, their fellow citizens, to be painted as the other. But the main things that I hear about, I don't even hear about the women's sports thing. I hear about I need health care. I hear about I'm putting insulin on credit cards. This is real stuff. I went down to East Palestine, Ohio. You guys are gonna hear me say this ad nauseum because they overwhelmingly voted for President Donald J. Trump. When that train derailed, colleagues, they were not saying, we want less government. They wanted to know where in the hell was Biden.
Yeah.
Where was Pete Buttigieg? Who's gonna punish Norfolk for poisoning our air and our water? And by the way, I might not be able to sell my home. While you had people like Joy Behar on The View saying that the people of East Palestine, Ohio got what they deserved.
But this brings me to the...
But they wanted, my point is they wanted more government interaction.
That brings me to the incoherence of public opinion, which is that people want more services from government for themselves because they pay a lot of money into government and less for other people. And this happens in both categories where conservatives will demonize welfare for minorities and poor people while still wanting in their same
Republican Party
in their same village those benefits. And on the other side, blue people saying like, wait, blue states actually contribute more to the federal government. Why don't we just withdraw benefits to red states? So this happens on both sides. People want government services, more stuff for them, less of it for others. And public opinion is increasing.
Well, by the way, on
bring
immigration,
Dan.
Donald Trump is moving here. I mean, we are now starting to talk about what about the agriculture industry, the hospitality industry, the construction industry.
We'll see where
Not
that
if
ends up.
MAGA gets the last word on
This
that.
is one issue that MAGA is not split on. Let's bring in Dan, our viewer. Dan, do we have Dan?
Oh, we have them.
Dan.
Hey, how you doing?
Dan in the house. Tell us where you are and what's on your mind.
I'm from LA. I wanted to ask you guys, living here in LA, the ICE raids have really devastated our community and, you know, our feelings about our neighbors. We consider a lot of these people that are getting apprehended our neighbors and whatnot. And as these ICE raids going to continue across the country, I'm just wondering, what do you think that the Democrats can do effectively, message-wise, to make this an issue for the midterms?
It's a really good question. I'll give my brief answer, and then I want to hear from you, Emma Jo. I think this is not a messaging problem for the Democrats. It's an issue problem. Those raids are popular. I think that we have now 5 polls that show that 5 national polls from the last 2 months that show that anywhere from 55 to 65% of Americans support deporting every single illegal migrant. And so this isn't a problem about how the Democrats can message about it. The problem is that they're popular. That's my view. What's your view, Emma?
100% agree. I think if they're smart, they will support it and talk about how it's effective and how things have gotten totally out of hand and that we need to reform the system going forward to not have chaos like this again. And it is chaos. I see Dan smiling. Dan, seriously, how many tens of millions of people came in under the Biden administration that caused absolute havoc in this country? It is so unforgivable, so infuriating that people have, the Overton window on this issue has moved all the way right, and the Democrats have no chance at stopping that. They have to go with it. And honestly, frankly, apologize to the people of this country.
So Dan, I actually did. I disagree with both you guys a little bit. I think to answer Dan's question, what the party needs to do is say it was a mistake in the Biden era to open the border to all these asylum claims.
Yeah.
That it is good to close the border and have a sane, legal immigration system. That they support deporting criminals. Where I disagree with you guys is I think to Dan's point, and we've seen this with some stories about Republican districts where these ICE raids have started to happen, with regular people, not bad hombres, not the guys with the tattoos and like everything made for TV. The waitress in Missouri that was Politico had the whole story about in the district that Trump won by like 80 points. She had been there for 20 years. She greeted everyone at the diner, and ICE came and got her, and the town went nuts.
Here's my problem.
Hold on a sec. They reached out and they returned her because the community was upset. I think this is like your thing. Everyone hates Congress, but they like their member of Congress. Everyone thinks everyone else's community is full of immigrants and criminals, but when you turn around and say, that's Bob, and like my kid's been playing with Bob for 15, his kids for 15 years and he coaches the Little League, Bob's good. Bob should say, go get the bad people.
But there's
Bingo.
stereotype.
Hold on. Here's my problem with
Bingo.
that, and then I want to let Dan come back in because I know that he has something he wants to get back in the conversation. My problem is that a lot of us got called Nazis for saying we need to have a border and let's get rid of the bad hombres.
Mistake.
Now that the whole
Why do
country
we-
has arrived there, like, where do we, like, that's not, there's something about that, like, Donald Trump is ahead of the curve again and again and again on so many of these issues. Okay, Nina, you get in and then we're going to hear
No,
from Dan again.
we shouldn't be calling them hombres, bad hombres. Everybody with a tattoo is not bad. We're stereotyping immigrants of color. There are other immigrants here that are illegal or, not supposed to still be here who may not necessarily be from countries where people are of color. So we just need to stop saying that, full stop. This is also manufactured in a way as well. The Democrats definitely went too far. We are a sovereign nation. We got a right to secure our borders. Let's have humane immigration reform and stick to it. They did politicize it in a way. They didn't really care about it, because if they cared about it, both parties would come up with a comprehensive plan. But I don't like, we're not gonna be calling these folks hombres. We're not gonna do that. We're not gonna stereotype everybody with tattoos. And the president is not adhering to his own promise. He said the baddest. But now they just ripping up everybody.
Well, I remember
didn't
him
hear the
saying
baddest.
everybody-
I heard
Okay,
mass
wait,
deportations.
all right. Let's let Dan
Criminals
respond, and then I want to
first.
get DeAndre in. Dan, respond.
No, those polls that you guys are talking about, when you dig deep, people don't want the people that've been here for 30 years deported. They want a pathway to citizenship. That's
part.
what this country's about.
Well, I don't know if they
so
want
much,
pathways
Dan.
to citizenship,
Dan,
but they
thank
don't want
you.
them deported. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, so much for coming, and we hope you'll come back to the show again. Thank you for sharing that with us. It was important for us to hear. DeAndre, welcome to the program. Great to see you. Tell everybody where you are and what's on your mind.
I'm Andre, and I'm in New York, and the amount of people who are undocumented, those 11 to 12 in the last census, includes everybody who doesn't have a visa, citizenship, or a green card. So we're talking about the 500,000 Cubans who are here, who are on a different status. We have 500,000 Haitians on a different status. The majority of people who are here without documentation are people who came here legally. They're just not classified as that under the census. So these are the people that Dan is talking about that people are upset about. They include people who are married to service members. They include people who are married to U.S. citizens. They're including the people who have children born here in this country. Those are the numbers that Dan is talking about when you look at the YouGov polls and CNN polls. People don't like people going into their community and deporting people. As a whole, we don't like bad hombres, and I don't like the phrase either, Nina. Thank you for pointing that out.
And thank
we
you
don't
for
like
pointing
that
out
idea.
undocumented too, because I think that's the
Thank
term
you.
we should use. So
Yeah.
thank you for that, and not
Yeah.
illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's my rant.
Okay, thank you so much, Andre. We only have a couple minutes left, so let's each go around and respond to Andre, and then we'll close it off.
Yeah,
Robby.
I mean, I agree with what Dan's been saying, and our people calling in. I mean, I'm looking at I looked it up. A Pew Research Center poll says 54% disapprove of increasing immigration and customs enforcement raids on workplaces where people who are in the U.S. illegally may be working. I think it's just a no-brainer, and that Trump kind of gets it, that we should focus. We have to prioritize our law enforcement resources. 12 million people. We have to pick how are we going to spend these resources. It seems uncontroversial to me, and I think Trump gets it, that we would use that to more vigorously remove from the country people who are involved in other criminal activity or who are plausibly connected to gangs or terrorism, and people who have been here and are working in whatever position who are not bothering anyone else should stay.
Emma.
I don't understand how, and I hear this all the time, and I understand how a reasonable person says it and gets there, but also, we don't apply this standard of bleeding heart compassion to any other crime. If a woman gets a DUI and she gets pulled over and she has a kid in the car and she has neighbors who love her and she has a whole life and she's a good person, do we say like, oh, it's just a DUI, come on? No, of course not. That's a crime and it's very dangerous and there's reasons why we have the law against it, and we don't wave away enforcement because somebody's a good person who has a community who loves them. Yet in this issue only do I always hear that. And I understand, yeah, Little League, a law was broken. Do we have self-respect? Do we have laws? Do they matter? Do we have sovereignty? Does that matter? You know, I don't understand. And you know, if you want to make that argument for the DUI nice lady, okay, then I guess, okay, maybe that, but can we apply this argument then across the board?
Nina.
Yeah, I'm not making that for somebody that gets behind the wheel driving drunk because they could kill somebody. So no, absolutely not. We need comprehensive immigration reform. This is complicated, but not, because I want to acknowledge that it is complicated, but what is not complicated is for Congress and the president, whoever they are, I'm not just talking about this president, they come up with comprehensive immigration reform and let's stick with it. Now, holding people responsible for a crime is different from sending ICE into communities to terrorize people. I think we both can hold people accountable and find a way to have comprehensive immigration reform. My last point is that even President Trump decided, oh, not the farm workers. Yeah. Oh, not the hotel workers. Right. You know what I'm saying? So he making exceptions.
Not happy about that.
Yeah, I know, but people.
Damn.
Well, I think, but I think, and I totally agree with you, right? That you can't be selective in your law enforcement.
Right.
The challenge with this issue is we were founded by immigrants, and from the dawn of our from the dawn of our history, there were people coming in illegally.
Okay.
So I mean, we have this history of people coming in, and we kind of are like, all right, you're here, give us your tired, give us your hungry, give us your poor. We welcome everybody. So I mean,
we
certain groups.
We update based on needs and culture.
All right, we have to go. So I'm going to close it out and just say we were founded on the Constitution, which excluded Black Americans, who, in my view, have been replaced by illegal migrants. I don't understand why all of the compassion that I feel to people not getting due process in this country has been passed to people who are not Americans. I fully support all of the deportations. I think this is what the president won on. I think it's very important to people. I think illegal migrants in the workforce drive down the wages of native-born Americans.
That's what I like about them. I want to make things cheaper.
All right. On that note, thank you all so much for joining us. We love to get somebody saying the quiet part out loud. We hope you'll come back next week, 4 p.m. For the group chat. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.